Hello, David here, and the project for today is repairing a book. This book is a Casebound book, and it's my sewn. This is from our local synagogue, and they asked me if I could repair it. I'm going to start with removing the spring back, and one of the headbands is lost, and I'll probably try to save this headband, but for now I have to remove it in order to repair it. I'm going to use some paper mending tape to repair any torn pages and also make any repairs that are on the folds for each signature. Then I'm going to sew the signatures together, and then I'm going to sew the signatures together to their adjacent signatures. This book isn't too badly gone. If I was a professional, I would take the case off and put a whole new case on it and then stamp a title on it, but I don't have the materials, and I don't have the stamping machine to stamp a title on it, so I'm just going to try to save this cover and glue it back together again and make it usable. I've already done a video on repairing library books. I'll put the link to that up at the top. I discovered that when I ran out of archival glue, the white paste that I was using is not archival, and I've got some new materials for that. I'll go over that pretty soon, but the way I found out was I did a road trip to Washington, D.C., and I could put a link to that up here too, but that's an hour-long video. You're not going to want to see it, and I don't have any videos. I went to visit the government publishing office in Washington, D.C., which is the largest print shop in the world, and they have a restriction on photography there because they've got a lot of confidential materials going on in production, and they get nervous about people walking through there with cameras. So I didn't take any picture, but I do have some stock photos, and I must say that hand bindery section, it's separated from the automated bindery. The hand binding section makes specialty binding projects for certificate holders and presentation books and manuals for Congress. They do the daily congressional record, and they do the presentation items that are handed out as real special products. They do it for Congress, and they do it for the president. They hand bind materials with real leather, and they stamp the titles on with gold, and then they marbleize the edges. They have a special hand process where they put a marbleized coloring around all three edges of the books, which is very pretty, and it's an old time-honored production. It's remarkable when you walk through their facility. You don't see any equipment there that's newer than 100 years old because the technology hasn't changed much in the last 200 years. They might have different glues and adhesives, but pretty much the tools and the technology is the same. It's like walking back in the time when you go there. And that's an old building. The government publishing office started off as a government printing office, and it was started in the Buchanan administration because there was corruption going on with letting printing contracts. So the government decided that Congress needed to have their own personal print shop. And the print shop was finally finished in the Lincoln administration, and President Abe Lincoln was the first president to visit the government printing office. They changed the name to the Government Publishing Office when things started going digital in the, maybe 2010 or so, somewhere around there. And the Government Printing Office was one of the few companies and factories going on where they had a lot of women in the workforce. They were very good at doing the typesetting and the bindery work that was required for a large production print shop. The floors are still there from the old days. It's end grain oak. It's real strong floors made to withstand the pressures of holding heavy cast iron equipment on the floors, and it's really amazing. You could still see some of the gouges and the lead shavings that are still embedded in those oak floors over there. But anyway, while I was there, I got to talk to the bindery workers who gave me some sources of where to get some materials. I needed an archival tape for repairing torn pages and reinforcing the folds on Smyth sewn signatures, and this is one of the products that was recommended, a Filmoplast from Germany by the Neschen company. This is a very thin paper mending tape, and you can even mend over type, and the type will show through the tape. It's that thin, and it's archival, and even though it's a pressure sensitive adhesive, it's made to last a long time. It's acid free and age resistant, and this is going to speed up my process because I used to use paste and paper for repairing tears and fixing the folds on the signatures, and I'd have to wait overnight for that paste to set. With this tape, there's no waiting. You just put the tape on and you can continue working. I also picked up an archival glue. This is Jade 711. It's acid free and it stays flexible. Supposedly it's quick drying. I don't know how long it takes to dry. But I got all this from the Talus company, so if you're interested, Talus company is on 330 Morgan Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. And these are one of the sources that the government publishing office recommended I try to get some materials. By the way, if you get frustrated separating the liner from the tape on this thing, I've got a video on how to do that. I'll put the link to that up on the top as well. I'll start by taking off the spring back and the headband. This cloth is called the crash. It's used to reinforce the binding for strength. Taking off the old glue. Gotta see what we got going on here. This beginning of the book. Checking out this signature. Doesn't seem to be any tears on this fold. That signature looks good. Then I got this loose group of pages. This is page 172, beginning 149, and that's 146. And I got this group here. There we go, there's page 147 to 148. That goes over this, so I'll have 146, 147, 148, 149, 150, 151. Back here at the end is 172, 173, 174, and right there is 175. So this group, I need to repair any tears on here, if any. This does not appear to be torn. Let's check the center fold. Doesn't seem to be any tears here. And there's no tears here, I'm going to put a reinforcing strip along this edge and then sew that together as a group. And then I'm going to sew this to that, and then I'm going to check this for tears. This is torn, so I'm going to remove this signature and re-sew it and repair it. Just find the end of this. So I was having trouble finding where the signature ends, and the best way to do that is to go through every page until you find the thread that's going through the middle. And here we have thread here. So there's 9 leaves, or 18 pages from the start to the middle. So I'm just going to count 9 back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This will be the end of this signature. And I could cut that out. Or can I? This is blowing my mind. These are connected. This must be the end of the signature. And I think there's glue holding that together. See, when these pages are torn, you can't tell where one starts and one begins. You can see these marks in here. If it wraps around the fold, you know that's one leaf. See that? Those black bars that's printed on there that show the edge of the signature. And there's another identifying mark right there. That's what the printer uses in production. I'm pretty sure this is the edge of the signature. Okay, and that's a good thing it's hard to come apart. That means it's strongly bound. Now, do I want to take off this signature and repair it? Definitely has some tears on it. So I found the center, the next good signature, that's right here. Since it's hard to find and it's hard to see the center, I can see the thread going through there. I'm going to put a piece of blue painter's tape here. It's got removable adhesive. It just helped me find it easier when I start sewing, when I sew the next signature in place, which will be this one. Let's set this off to the side. I'll work on this next. Let's open it up, take off any excess glue. Got the 2 outer ends cleaned up, and I got these 3 signatures cleaned up. I removed the excess glue. I've got reinforcement tape around the outside, and it's hard to see the holes for sewing, so I'm going to run the holes through with this ice pick so it just find the center section. And even here it's hard to see. I can see if I hold it up to the light, I could see where the holes are, and it's just a matter of punching through like that. And all the holes among all the signatures have to line up. If they don't, the edges of the sheet won't line up. I'm going to sew this with a chain stitch. I wish I didn't have so many holes in here. I want to leave about 3 inches of the tail sticking out. Go back into the same hole, leaving a small loop. Each hole has a loop sticking out of it, and the hardest part is to make sure that the loop doesn't slip out, or it has to be re-looped through that hole again. And then I use tape to hold the loop from slipping out, but the tape was hard to get off the loop, so I resorted to the clips. So using tape to hold the loops wasn't working out, so I'm using these spring clamps. It was just freaking me out. I didn't want the loop to pull out through there and I'd have to start all over again. So the clamps are working good. So I've got the last threading through the last hole right here. It's time for the next signature. This matches up to the page number, 240 to 241. And let me find the center here. Just right there. Make sure that there's no slack in the first one that you've sewn. And we're going to come out through the second hole. Then we're going to go through the loop. Take the spring clamp off. And we're going to take the slack out of the thread by pulling on the next loop forward. Not that side, this side. And pull it tight. Then we go back into this hole. We find the center. Into this loop. And then back through the same hole. I suggest using a really long piece of thread because I ran short here. I had to splice on another piece of thread and that made the project a lot more difficult.
Once you get past the second signature, the third and succeeding signatures are a breeze. It's just a matter of sewing them to the threading of the other signatures. What you do is put the run the thread through the underneath side of the signature below it, and then loop that needle around the thread that's holding that adjacent signature to the binding, and then bring it back around and back into the hole of that third signature. If that adjacent signature is sewn tight or glued on, you're going to have some trouble getting that needle around there, and you want to make sure you don't poke a hole through the middle of the signature of the paper. You want to actually get that needle in between those signatures and not into the signature.
It's the last stitch of this signature. I'm going to tie it off with a kettle stitch. And I'm going to put 2 in because this is the end of my thread. I'm going to have to get some more thread. I've got that front section sewed in. I think I got all my sewing done. Next thing to do would be to put some glue along the spine and put a spring back on it. Maybe it's not pretty, but it'll be functional. Our next step is to cut a spring back. All a spring back is a tube. It attaches this part of the book to the back strip. And you're supposed to use a heavyweight paper. I'm going to use some craft paper. And to measure that, got about 1 5/8 of an inch, so I'm going to need 2 of those for the other side of the tube. 1 5/8 is 1.625 times 2 is 3 1/4 inches. And then I'm going to need a 1/2 inch for a glue tab to glue the tube together. So I'm going to need a 3 3/4 inch wide strip of craft paper in order to make the tube. And I have an old bag for that. So I'm going to cut it away off camera. Here's what I have. I'm going to put some glue on this glue tab here. I'm going to put some wax paper in the middle so it doesn't keep itself glued closed. This reinforcement cloth, also known as a crash, gets glued down first. And this will get glued down over that. That gets glued down over that, like that. It's not going to be pretty, but it should be strong. I'm going to set the book up in a vise to keep the round back. As you can see, it's kind of flat, actually concave, and it should be glued like that for a round back. Alright, I've got the book clamped up, got the glue ready. Instructions say that it's quick drying glue, but it doesn't say how quick. And it says to apply with a brush, roller, or squeegee. I'm just going to use my fingers. I need to get some glue down into these flaps on both sides, and I'm going to glue the crash down. I sure hope this doesn't cause cancer in California.
Clean up excess glue with a damp rag. Put a weight on it. You want the weight to follow the contour of the round back. Whoops. Put some wax paper over it. So it's the next day. I wanted to wait for the glue to dry a full day. Book's holding together pretty well. I think it's very functional. And the round back held its position. However, the spine didn't go down straight. That does not look good. I tried to straighten it before the glue set, and this was the best I could get. Now to take this wax paper out. There we go. So all in all, the bookbinding was a success. Book's holding together very well. It's just not pretty, but most of the time the book's always going to be open to the pages which they're preying on. And this was the first time I ever tried to chain stitch. And as you saw, I had a lot of trouble with that. And probably because there were so many holes drilled through the fold in the signatures, there was a lot to deal with, and that was my first time, but in the end it worked out okay. The pages are strong. I want to thank you guys and gals for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more great videos from David GPO.